are sick beds, or there are nice, warm, cozy, non-sick beds. Let's go back a little bit and recapitulate what we were talking about. It's always good to kind of remind ourselves a little bit. So, a central issue that emerged in our discussion last time and will remain, I think, at the very heart of any discussion is, well, control and lack of control, or to give it a different term, reason and feeling, emotion. The thought that on the one hand, we're made nervous by lack of control, and we're reassured by control. But when we think through it a little bit, we realize that control has its downsides too. So we don't want to have it all be so controlled, predictable, boring, what have you, that all the excitement goes out of it. So this is something, I think you might, if you've been reading in Love's Confusions, there's a little passage I might just read from you, from the Russian writer Alexander Herzen, which I think is a splendid thought. So you just kind of good to have it in mind. It's on page 34 of Love's Confusions, and Herzen writes this way: the individual posits himself as his own end. Society posits itself in the same way. These kinds of antinomies constitute the poles of everything alive. They are insoluble because, in effect, their resolution would be the indifference of death, the equilibrium of rest, whereas life exists only in movement. With the total victory of the individual or of society, history would end with predatory individuals or with a peacefully grazing herd. That's a really useful thought to have in mind. Sometimes we want, under the pressure of conflict, we seek a resolution, a permanent resolution of it, right? But the permanent resolution of conflict is stasis. Nothing changes. You know the Talking Heads song, Heaven? I'll sing it for you anyway. How's that? It's this. Heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. The band that plays in heaven plays my favorite song. It plays it once again. It plays it all night long. Right? The thought is that just endless repetition of the same is what we get if we allow reason or control to rule the world. And endless repetition of the same, while it can be in one way reassuring, is in another way unreassuring because it's boring, dreary, not exciting. And the eros, the desire that we have to be alive and is destroyed by the very thing that it sought. Right? It wanted this peace. So think of marriage as the way we were thinking about it last time, as the resolution of one a sort of comforting thought that you could satisfy, just to pick one, your sexual needs in a reliable and yet continuously exciting way, right? And then that would solve that problem. You could kind of tick off the box, right? And think, okay, now I can move on to other things. But we see what the problem is with that, right? The problem is the very thing that guarantees the presence, reassurance, reliability, and so forth, undercuts some of the other things that we want from our sexual lives: excitement, risk, newness, being taken to new places, all those kinds of things, the reliability and so on. So those poles of, on the one hand, we give them all kinds of names. So Herzen says the individual versus society, right? That's the thing. But equally well, right, we could give it the name of passion and reason, right, order and chaos, all of these things. So what we have to do, and I think this is another really good thought that Herzen has, these poles, these oppositions, are part of what it is to be alive. They're the pressure that produces or causes us to produce better resolutions to problems rather than accepting the ones we've got. So every time a couple faces a problem, that it resolves by doing something new or improving, they're better off than they were if no problem, or the problem had been submerged, or there was no attempt to deal with it. This is standard. I'll give a very simple example. Junk workouts in the gym are the ones that where you're no longer putting any pressure on any of the muscles that you're exercising. You ratchet it up a level, and now to do those things doesn't actually put the needed strain that will produce more muscle growth and better fitness. So you have to find a way to simultaneously challenge yourself in order to improve and so on. The idea of now it will all just become painless, now it's easy, it used to be hard, now I'll just keep doing the easy thing, means you don't improve. Other examples, playing chess with people who are less good than you are or just as good doesn't result in much change. Taking classes that you can ace, right, because you already know how to deal with them. Don't challenge you, don't make your mind develop and grow, don't expand your horizons. But on the other hand, things that are too hard for you, things that you can't engage with, that turn you off or that are too difficult, they don't work either. You have to find a kind of sweet spot. But the sweet spot keeps changing. It isn't like you find it, the perfect, because that'll become routine too. You have to find a way to do both of those things. So one of the things that Plato does in the Symposium is a kind of measure of his brilliance, I think, is that he simultaneously puts those things on the agenda, but they're there as objects of discussion. But then he dramatizes them too by making your reading of the Symposium put you into these different things. So there'll be pieces of order followed by disruptions and chaos. Will the order be reestablished, or is this a break, a real cut, so it won't be reestablished? The risk that you take is that the disorder may keep tumbling on, and you won't be able to go back and reestablish the order again. So that's the risk that there is. So for example, think it this way. We get together to have a discussion. We recognize that the topic we want to discuss is difficult. We think, well, a good way to deal with that would be if we all had a glass of wine, relax a little, lower our inhibitions, be a little less afraid. So we do. But in doing so, we take, as the Greeks would say, we take the god Bacchus, right, like arrows, into the room. We say, you come and stay with us for a while. But the god Bacchus, if we indulge too much, will actually just intoxicate us and make us unable to speak. Right? So we have to chart that balance in which we're just relaxed enough to still be alert and engaged, but not so relaxed, but in fact we can't take in anything. And life seems to me to be a lot like that, right? We're constantly, we want to hide it, I think, from ourselves. We're not very good at describing our own needs well. And so we leave out all kinds of things that are crucial. I'll give you a few examples. Our constant need for fantasy, the way that we're constantly clicking off into daydream, dream, fantasy, little imagined things. We're not able to keep our mind focused on anything for very long. We have to flip off into other things that either they can be anxious making because they're on our minds and they keep nagging, or they can be consoling. We remember something good because, this is not so good, but getting a little energy from something we imagine was good. We need disruption, disorder, we need entertainment, we need sports, we think how rich the world is. Our jobs are often not very satisfying or fulfilling. We need ways to make them more so. There's a great poem of there's an American poet of the 20th century, I'm just blanking on his name. The poem is, there are wolves in the next room waiting. And the secret is not the wolves you'll never get rid of. There are always wolves in the next room waiting. But you need tricks to keep them from getting into the room you're in. And as long as you can keep them in the next room, you're fine. And they are sort of clever, right? They are challenging you. And we're always having to invent new strategies for dealing with stress, boredom, right? And the world is, as a result, an immensely rich and complicated one. And it's not uniform, simple, or it's not just one game in town, one kind of power. It's a multiverse of things, all of which offer us challenges and consolations. And the art of life, to an extent, is to keep that creative flow, right, without sort of succumbing to the seductions of boredom and ordinary life, sort of endless suburbia, right, without ending up in kind of constant chaos. Strikes me that one of the attractions of becoming a freedom fighter, say, joining the resistance, getting a gun, is that it's exciting. And it seems like you're doing something really meaningful and important. You're fighting for the good, right? The attractions of extremism are not to be diminished, right? It's not as if they don't offer. Just imagine what most people's lives, what if you're not careful, your life will be like, right? In which it's dreary, dull, your job is not good, you have a long commute in the morning, you come home tired, your partner is tired, your kids are demanding, right? And it just seems like you can't get off that wheel. How attractive the thought of getting up the M16 and fighting for something really worthwhile, killing a few people. I mean, I think that we mustn't diminish these ideas. The role of fantasy and energizing is a hugely important part of our lives. And without it, we'd just be flat, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be something that was maybe, I don't know, and I'm thinking here of like Greek tragedy, or like the Iliad or something like that. Yeah. Something that like kind of the modern bureaucratization of life has destroyed is like you have the big change in the Enlightenment where like the mystical just in everyday life decays, and like maybe the Romantics try to revive it, but like it's never quite solid because they're trying to destroy rationalization. And then you have like, have you ever seen the movie Brazil before? Yeah. Yeah, you have that like something. It's like a bureaucratic hell type thing. It's like you have functioning doesn't occur by way of an individual will, as it occurs more because like someone slots himself in and that kind of thing. Yeah. And I don't know. My response to that doesn't seem necessarily to be like radicalism. It's like radicalism, like in terms of like violence, is like the way out. But it's more just that like some fundamental structure of the way in which life has lived, or the life is lived, promotes a certain kind of like inability to really do anything. And the question
I think we shouldn't underestimate the political importance of disempowerment, of making it seem as if nobody can do anything because the whole damn thing is so outrageously complicated. So somehow this is a theme very much in the films of David Lynch. Behind every powerful figure, there's another ghostly figure behind whom there is yet another ghostly figure who makes a phone call to a room where there is yet another. And the thought is, the buck never stops anywhere. There's always somebody always making another phone call to somebody else. And so nobody's ever responsible for anything. And you get involved in what you're just going to bog down in the endless bureaucratic quagmire too. And in a way, what that tells you is don't be interested in this. Don't think you can make any changes. But then when you look at it carefully, you realize that that's part of a smokescreen to make us not be radical and empowered, not think we can do anything. But if millions of people show up in Washington on the street and demand something, we can stop the Vietnam War, we can get equal pay for women, stop women being abused in the world. All kinds of things can happen, but we have to get up off our asses to do something. And unfortunately, the rest of life says, your mortgage payment is due. That loan you took out as a student, you still have to pay. All of that stuff says you can't afford to do these other things. Anyway, so those are some of the issues that lie behind questions of control and the opposite of it. And so that was one of the things that we were talking about last time.
And today we were going to look at some a little bit different, because so one of the things that happens, right, is after Aristophanes speaks, we get the voice of tragedy. We get the young tragedian Agathon talking about love as a beautiful god, a bit like himself, right? And then we get an episode that's quite different, disruptive, because Socrates is supposed to give a speech about love. So every time the order that the symposiarch is trying to impose gets disrupted, either by hiccups, right? Well, shit happens, right? So everything is nice and orderly, and then the fire alarm goes off, the unknown person shows up at the door, the lights go out, somebody gets sick. Life is full of those kinds of disruptions. And then there's the disruption of the hiccups, right, like that. And then Socrates doesn't give a speech. Right? Instead, he questions Agathon about his speech. So the first thoughts are, this is the way we should talk about love. I should make a speech about it. Then you should make a speech about it. Then somebody else should make it. And we should all just passively listen to these speeches and take them in. And Socrates said, no, that's not what we should do. Do you mind if I ask you a few little questions? Right, that's the key, right? And in it is encoded another bit of amazing sort of Socratic or Platonic skill of writing. The two Greek verbs, eran, to love, and erotan, to ask questions, have overlapping parts. So ask away and love away, right, meaning you're expressing with the same verbs. Right, so in a way, Socrates is giving a speech about love, but not by talking about it, but by actually demonstrating it in the asking of questions. So his thought is this: speeches are like fast food. They open your mouth and they cram stuff into it. He uses these analogies on it. It's like they pour water into your head, right? Like air. Big deluge of verbiage and and Socrates is like those great thing that Kierkegaard says in his book, The Concluding Unscientific Postscript. It says, when somebody's mouth is so full of food that they can't chew, does feeding them consist in shoving yet more in there? Or does it consist in helping them to chew what's in there already? There's the Socratic move, right? I'm not going to stuff more stuff in your mouth. I'm going to get you to chew what you've heard already, right? So now we'll start chewing. And as Socratic questioning is the teeth that do the chewing. Right? Says, okay, so let's talk about it. You say, well, it's beautiful. It's kind of like a god of self. It's self-same and whole. It doesn't need anything, right? It's a god. Love's not needy. Love is finished and final. Right? And I said, no, actually, look, love is needy. Love is looking for something that you don't have. Love is hunger. Love is an emptiness. Love is, right? Then the next part, love is a verb. Like, it's not a noun. It looks like a noun, but it's just a nominalized verb, right? The first part you want to do about love is that love is about loving A, loving B. It's not take the noun and look at it. It's take the verb and look up the verb, right? And ask, what is it for A to love B? What is it that A loves? So that's the sound. Okay, so now we've set it up. What do you think is the main, if you were asked, what would you think the main finding is of the examination of Agathon? What did they discover? What's the outcome of that examination, would you say? I suppose you were sitting in a bar and you got to tell somebody, what would you say? I'd say, I wish I brought my book with me because I could look it up. No, go ahead. What would you say? Comes out of it. So it should be a speech. We should have speech making and not questioning.
Can you ask the question again?
Yeah. Yeah, what's the main outcome of the Socratic engagement in Act 1? If you had to say, well, look, everything's gone along this way, and then Socrates asks some questions, and then we find out. So a couple of things happen. Something happens to Agathon, and something is discovered about love. So let's start with the second one. What is found out about love? Yeah.
In a way, it's humans' attempt at immortality, because you want love, but once you have it, you want to maintain it forever. And then there's the discussion about pregnancy.
Yeah.
And
Sounds a bit like you might be segueing into the first part of Diotima's speech. Before we get to what Diotima does in the eternity, there's an earlier little bit where, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He says that love is the love of something.
Yeah.
And specifically the love of things of which he has a present need, and
Yeah.
that's often beauty.
Yeah. So the first thought is there's something, and it's hard to find the right terminology for this, but the thought is, might be this, what is it that sparks love? What does love, what engages love? And so what is it that turns it on? And the claim there is that it's beauty. Right? So the first thought, and I'm going to offer you a thought about this, and then we'll see how Plato deepens the thought. So let's look at the courtship ritual of the bowerbird. I don't know if you know about Australian bowerbirds, but you definitely should Google bowerbirds and look up the film of how bowerbirds court. So what the male bowerbird does is the male bowerbird creates a little house, and in it he puts little brightly colored objects. He takes a little stick in his beak and he spits onto wood ash, and he paints little pictures, and he makes a little garden outside the house. It looks awfully it looks like suburbia for birds, right? So you definitely have to look at it. It's very sweet. It's cute. So the bowerbird is a little brown bird who makes all this stuff. And then the female kind of comes to look at this new path that the bird has made for its new apartment, right? She kind of comes, he stands back in the corner, and she comes and looks at it. And if she likes it, she stays, and they mate. But if she doesn't like it, she leaves. And then the little male bowerbird looks like this, and he goes and he moves some things around in the apartment, right? Maybe she didn't like that shiny, I shouldn't put it there, maybe it's the interior decorating of such fault, maybe I should do this. You think, okay, so that's the first thing, is what's going on there? I give one more example, is the blue-footed booby. Birds have great courtship rituals, and so do we. And by looking at theirs, we can find out a lot about our own. So the blue-footed booby is even better. The male just does a little dance, and then he shows his blue foot. His foot is blue underneath, and he shows it to the female, and she sort of looks at it, and she goes, and he puts it down, and she goes and looks at it, and then she, that one. And you think, what are they doing? That's this blue-footed stuff. I mean, it would be really cool if we were like that, right? You sort of look out feet, right? That's a beautiful foot, right? That's the thought, right? There's got to be a hook, right? So what is the thought is, the bower is the hook, right? It says, look at my bower. It could be yours. I come with it, but it could be your bower. Look at that little foot. Isn't that cute? Right? And we're like that too. The hook is something that we can see and that we can get fairly quickly. It can't be exploratory, because the exploration requires that there be a hook to start with, right? I mean, why explore? You just think, oh, creep, am I going? Right? Or you're saying, oh, right? You don't have that, like, I want to find out a lot about you. It's the ones where there's something that makes you take the next step, right? And that is what Plato was talking about with the beautiful. So, takalan, right, noble, beautiful, well-ordered, structured, it's whatever it is that provides that magical hook. So love looks for this thing that says, that's what I want. But now there's another part. Okay, so that's what, think about it that way, that whatever it is going to get us to mate, reproduce, has to be something that we can access. But one of the things we know, and you'll see this with Diotima, one of the things we know is that the thing we access is not actually the thing that's going to be important. The blue-footedness might be a sign of genetic fitness. The bower might be a sign of intelligence and so on. The peacock's tail is a fascinating one, right? The female is not responding to the beauty of the female, of the tail, we think. It's rather like this. That's a handicap. So the male peacock has this massive tail that makes it can fly, makes it easy prey for predators, right? So having it doesn't seem like a really good idea. Right? What do you think explains the fact that male peacocks have those big tails?
Genetic fitness is like defined by reproduction.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Reproductive success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
I'm in the psych class right now and it defined fitness as like ability to reproduce.
Yeah, yeah. So something about that just tells us that getting a tail like that is the result of this process. So there's something that makes for fitness in this, but what could it be? Yeah.
I remember reading a study that said it's the number of eyes, so the little yellow circles on the
Yeah.
tail, and typically a female will not mate with a male if he doesn't have like 40 or more.
That's great. I mean, you can see, you want to hire the bowerbird to paint some extra eyes on your tail if you don't have enough. But that postpones the question, right? What is it about the big tail that makes it important? Yeah.
I think, I like an anthropology class to talk about this.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think it's because you have the big tail, so even if a predator comes for you,
Yeah.
you can, if you survive, you'll
Yeah.
be able to reproduce and set that trait. So showing that you
Yeah.
have a big tail is because you survived from predators,
Huh.
which kind of shows the woman that I'm strong and
Yeah.
I'm fit enough.
Listen, with a tail like this, and I'm still around, can you imagine what kind of a bird I've got to be? So the analogy that I saw, which I really like, was you imagine like those Greek athletic contest tests that kings or fathers are always having to see who can marry their daughter, which are all little allegories of this very same thing. And they all show up, ready for the foot race, and ready. And then this guy shows up, and he's got an anvil strapped to his back. He's going to run with this big, heavy weight. You think right away, he must be really, either he's really stupid, or he's an incredible runner, right? That's the thought. It's a kind of handicap that allows you to think, oh, this bird has really got to be strong. So the first clue is, yeah, you're right about, it can be that. It's that the eyes correlate with the other traits, and then they become the female's clue. She doesn't recognize why she likes that, of course. She just goes for it. But the underlying causal mechanism is, this is about genetic fitness. I'll give one other example. This is us now, not the birds. So if we show schematic female faces on bodies, cross cultures, and ask people to categorize which ones are beautiful, we get a massive amount of agreement. The agreement is, and if we vary features, we can start to home in on what's being selected for. And what's being selected for is first bilateral symmetry. Right? That's a genetic fitness one, because genes, right, genetic unfitness often shows up with asymmetries. That's one. And the other is we want a certain width of the pelvis, because reproductive fitness, especially from things with big heads like us, raise a certain pelvic width. If it's too small, you're going to have birth problems. and you want nice breasts because they gotta feed the offspring. So you just pick those. You get a sort of symmetrical schematic that looks like a lot of things. Now, of course, we know that these are all manipulable, right? It's not as if these are fixed. Now, I can be changed and moved around. It's not as if it's fixed. But if you just go cross-culturally and show schematics, we're like the bowerbirds or the blue-footed rubies, right? We too, and we're not aware that we're selecting for that. We're not aware that that's what attracts us. We're simply attracted to things that look a certain way, and now there's an underlying explanation. So we're going to see that work out a little bit with Diatino's picture, too, that underlying the hook, the beauty, the visible goodness, so to speak, there's the underlying real goodness that the beauty is an accessible side to. Okay, so now we've got what's love for, and now we sort of see a little bit of a story about why there's more to, once we start asking about it, not as a God, but as a verb, like here's a desire I've got. Okay, that's one. Now what about these desires? What are they? Why am I interested in anything? Why am I interested in that beauty? What makes me want it? What's a desire?
I feel like the emphasis was on the fact that you don't have it.
Yeah. So the thought, and this is one of the most, if you read the little couple of pages of Love's Confusions on this, he says this is one of the, this has legs, so to speak, it keeps reappearing, but desire is an emptiness. Notice that it's very much like Aristophanes. You want what you don't have, and when you get it, you stop wanting it. That's the picture, and it persists through all kinds of thought about desire. And I think one of the things that we should ask about it is it's very attractive. I call it the appetitization of desire. It makes every desire seem like hunger. As you fill up, or a thirst, right? You fill up with it. It doesn't seem to fit sexual desire very well, right? It's not clear that, you're filling up with something when you have a sexual desire. It doesn't matter. The two are often put together as a kind of emptiness. You want what you don't have. And then when you get it, there's the second problem of desire, which is satiation. So if you imagine that the perfect desire satisfier would fill it once and for all, right? Then you've got the other problem of desire, which is now you don't have any desires anymore. Now you're bored. Notice this, the same problem back again, right? On the one, you project an idea of what would be great if we could just satisfy our desires once and for all. We never have to eat again. And then what would we do? Right? That's always to have that. Okay, so, yeah.
I was just going to add to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes a lot of people desire things that they can't have as
Yeah.
well, and it kind of goes along with that. Like, if you could have it, now what? And so something like, if someone plays hard to get,
Yeah.
or like something that you just want because you can't have
Yeah.
it, is more entertaining. I
Yeah. More, and in fact, that's part of the great ritual. I think it's probably changed a lot, but it used to be that the form of dating, in which the female, who had more to lose and this way more to give, right? Genetically, the females are the ones who have more of their whose reproductive products are scarcer, so eggs are limited, sperm is cheap, right? So you pursue the female, and the thought was you have to see who's really interested. You have to check things out, and you should play hard to get. You still get that kind of dating advice on certain kinds of dating college. So don't give it all on the first day. You've got to kind of lure along until you get commitment or whatever it is you're out for. Yeah, and you're right. Tantalization, frustration, jealousy, all of these, they've got negative sides, but they've also got positive sides, in which, right, you get the desire, you increase it, but also you encourage the other person to come to understand their desire. So let me give a very simple example. Right, you've come to take your partner for granted. right? You've been together for a while, and you're kind of complacent about it. And then you see somebody else interested in him or her, and you see that there's a risk involved. If you don't do something, you might lose them. And then suddenly your desire, and actually a couple of things happen. One is, you realize how important the other person is to you. And that comes when you think, well, you might lose them. Suddenly, that's pushed up in front of you, right? So you're sharpened. And in the same way, right, here's another one. I mean, even when it comes to sexual intercourse itself or sex itself, right, there's the foreplay, the buildup of desire, the frustration that continues to be kept at just the right level is itself one of the things that makes the subsequent orgasm yet more explosive and so on. So, you know, we always have to keep all that sort of stuff in mind. But, you know, these are devices that we utilize. We can use every one of them badly or wrongly, but we can also use them well to ensure that we get more, or that our pleasure is better, or desire is better or more knowledge. Okay, so now we've got a bunch. Look, we've got a theory about desire. We've got a notion of the object of love being beauty. But there's another effect that being cross-examined by Socrates has, and this one is on Agathon. So what does all this do to Agathon? Yeah.
He said something like, I have no idea what I was
Yeah, and that's something that it seems to me that's enormously diagnostic. So look, just think about it, right? Imagine that you're together with a few of your friends, and the topic comes up. So what is this love stuff anyway, right? And you start talking about it. And one of the things that's remarkable about us is how readily we come up with theories about it. Right? I mean, it's sort of like, we can bullshit till the cows come home about anything. The less we know about it, the more we are willing to say it, and then we become quite dogmatic about it, right? Like, now we've put that piece out on the table, we get attached to it, we want to defend it. Weird feature of us, right, which is again one that we like to have closure on these kinds of questions. It's as if we like to think that we do already know these things, and we want to get, that's sort of like, that's taken care of. I don't have to, I know that. And then when we get pushed, asked a few questions, as Socrates does, our apparent knowledge evaporates. It doesn't take but a little bit of pressure to get us to think, gee, I don't really know much about that. Yeah, because that's one class. The other is you just kill Socrates, right? Yeah. No, what were we talking about again? Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing I think this relates to is in like the first chapter of Love's Confusions, when you ask them, why do you love someone?
Yeah.
Or what is it you love about them? And you basically are speechless, so
Yeah.
you can't say anything.
Right. Yeah.
So even though we might think, oh, we're right, this relationship is perfect.
Yeah, that's right. But curiously, very often we do have a list of stuff we'll say, right? Oh, it's that smile, but at the same time, we recognize that that's a hopelessly inadequate answer, right? It's just, no, we're not getting at it at all. And then we retire to, it's chemistry. The chemistry is right. We say things like that. I don't know if you know this Frank Sinatra song, Who cares to define what chemistry this is? Who cares with your lips on mine what ignorance bliss is? As long as and the world around us shatters, how little it matters, how little we know. That's the title of the song. It's a great song, by the way. But the thought of it is, right, at a certain point, you think, ignorance is bliss here. We don't need to know this. It's not about what we know. And I don't want to just, one thing we can do, though, you'll see again, exemplifies the very thing we're talking about, is it's easy under certain circumstances to imagine that the problem you're dealing with has a certain shape and that this is the way to answer it. And if you're all sitting around talking, you can sort of think that you can talk your way to saying what love is, but that you can give a theory of it. really what we want when it comes to love is a theory of it, right? And a different thing, which the Frank Sinatra song is, that's just not what you need. You don't need a theory of everything. Some things are better off untheorized, right? So don't, it's intellectualism. It's a style of approaching problems to think that every problem is solved when you have some good theory of it, right? There's a French joke which you might or might not get, but it's like this. Oh yeah, that works in practice, but does it work in theory? You know, right, which is a wonderful comic French reversal of things, because the French do like theories, right? So, don't we all? So, I think that one thing you can think of is that theories are themselves instruments of control. They're not neutral. A theory, remember we went back to that all love stories are seductive, they're all embroiled in ideologies, they're all getting you on board with something. It's as if we're all blue-footed boobies showing up our little blue feet, but some of them are theories, right? And we say, look at that, right? Or look at us, they're we in love. Look at this love story, isn't this the right one? And I think we want to be wary that even the very idea that what you most need here is a theory might not be the right thing. You know, think about being good at dancing the tango, right? So that's just things people do together, and it's difficult to tango well together. It requires training and skill, but at a certain point, it also requires chemistry. The good tango partners are the ones who read each other correctly, who can manage to put into the dancing the expressive quality of, you know. And you might think, so are the ones who do that the ones who have the really good theory of the tango? You might think, no, maybe not. Yeah.
This is gonna sound rudimentary, but can you like define like what chemistry is?
Yeah, that's just. I think what chemistry is. It's a je ne sais quoi, right? It's the I don't know what it is. So that once we start getting to the chemistry, what we're saying is it's not about anything I can articulate, right? As long as I kiss you and the world around us shatters, how little it matters, how little we know, right? As long as it's working, who wants a theory of it? Yeah, go ahead.
I think when we talk about like knowing someone else, right? I think it also relates to like the polls example.
Yeah.
I think like sometimes when you like love someone, like knowing them too much, could like destroy that love. While also like sometimes like very knowing something about someone. Yeah. It's kind of like people desire that sometimes too, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know, like one night stand or something like that. So I think there's like also like a balance between those things too. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I think that's what most relationships are, like a balance of how much you really want to know a person.
Well, I think, so one thought is, you're absolutely right. So discretion and understanding where not to go, right? And how to respect the limits or boundaries of another person, or indeed your own, are crucial parts of this. So it's not always the case that everything should be transparent. That's another intellectual defense, right? The thought is that we have to shine a bright light on everything. It should all be transparent. We should have a good theory of everything. We should be able to articulate all of it. And that's the ideal. Well, that's the ideal in some cases. That's the ideal in physics and in mathematics and a whole lot of science. It should be transparent. It should all be explained. But in things like our personal relationships, it's not really clear. So there are a whole set of areas where we really do abandon theory. Can I give you really a bizarre one that you could just see what it's like? So, any stereophiles? Do you even know what a stereophile is? So these are people who are into high-end stereo equipment. Don't laugh. I like high-end stereo. We've all got to like something, man. No, wait. I'll give you an example. So the physicist's approach to sound reproduction is simply this. Look, it's electricity comes in, there's a pile of junk, it does this, just give me the statistics on these things. They're all the same. Or this one's the same as that one, these are no different. So the audiophiles get in the room, and they wire up the two systems, and the physicist says, anything that you detect is just nonsense, because there's nothing to detect. I've told you the full story about these. So the audiophiles say, this one is better. And listen if I change, right? And then they say, yeah, and they all agree. That is, you can do blind testing. You can even switch the wires, change them from this direction to that direction. Audiophiles can hear that difference. The physicist says there's no difference. So who's right about this? So imagine that you're doing the chemistry of wine, and you say, oh, these two wines are exactly the same chemically, so one's $5 and the other's 50. You get the $5 one. Now that might be right, but it might be that you come to be able to discriminate the two wines, and you prefer one. You might prefer the $5, which is even better, but you're likely to prefer the $50 one, even if you don't know the price. But that's the issue. We might think, it doesn't have to be magic. It's rather that what we're responding to and listening to is not determined fully by the underlying physics, right? Same with cooking. Right? What we want is food that tastes good to us. And food that tastes good to us can be chemically the same as food that doesn't taste very good to us. And we're not interested simply in the chemistry. We're interested in the feel of it, the taste of it, the sound of it. Those are things that we want, where the issues might be, it's very hard to explain, but I can get you to hum the tune though. Listen. So I could do it with you if we had all this stuff set up. I put a set of speakers up, you listen to them. I said, do you like those? Well, listen to these. Which do you like better? Okay, so let's, and then eventually you think, these do sound better. Right? And if you're lucky, those are the cheap ones, right? So but that's just it. Same with everything, right? We're looking for something where what matters to us is, so to speak, the practice, not the theory. Who cares about the theory as long as the food tastes really good? And go ahead.
I think also another problem with the physicist's approach is that he doesn't experiment, right?
Yeah.
Because he knows everything beforehand, right? He has all these theories.
Who's this?
The physicist. And
Yeah.
He has the theory, so that's it. No need to explore anymore.
Well, that is another worry, which is that sometimes physics takes its present form to be its final form. So if we were looking at physics, say, in the 1930s, and then we look at it now, with the very kinds of things that physicists find it plausible to posit in order to explain everything, would have looked utterly and completely bizarre and weird, like fantasies, if we looked at it in the 30s. So we have to be very careful. That's the other one. The pretension of theory, which is that it's reached its final form. Well, we've got the theoretical truth. There's always something that you ought to be suspicious of, because, well, here's an induction. They thought they had it in the 30s too, and they thought they had it long before. We keep going back to the 5th century BC. The Thales thought everything was water. He was fairly confident about it. It was wrong, right? And that we'll be wrong too. So we mustn't ever get ourselves to think that we're in the position already of omniscience. That's another theoretical pretension. That is a liability to the theorizing. So there's a couple of ideas that are quite, right, we see again, the theory is a bit like the control, and experience is a bit like the non-controllable. And what we want is this. This is only good if it leads to good this. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to question the division that's here.
Yeah.
It's it seems to me there's a division between knowing with regard to the human subject and then knowing in an absolute sense.
Yeah.
And my issue here seems to be that if you want to know with the stereo, what is good sound, you can't study sound as a separate category, how the sound comes to be, and you can't just study kind of general experience. You would have to study the stable theoretical conditions under which good sound comes to be for the individual.
Yeah.
And I think that's a question. That's a question of the theory of reality, and that's something phenomenological.
Yeah.
So in that case, the question with regard to the physicist is not so much what makes this good sound, but it's in what way does the ear and whatever.
So I agree, there's another parallel, so that the physicist looks at the production and says these producers are all the same. And that is another thing, of course, we can think is that if we knew much more about the physiology of hearing, we knew far more about background conditions of ears, we'd get closer to being able to explain the groups of physicists. But you're right but there's something else you entered in, which I think is really crucial. In science, in physics, biology, chemistry, all these sciences, we're interested in the types, not the tokens. We're not interested in this, we're interested in things like that, right? So we're classifying it. We're not thinking, what does this booby like, right? We're thinking about what boobies are like, right? We're not thinking about this one. But when it comes to ourselves, right, the individual, the notion of our being a unique one of a kind and not just tokens of the same type becomes very important. So, for example, consider it this way. I assure you that this wine or this system or this food is better. It tastes better, right? But if it doesn't taste good to you, right, it doesn't matter how good it ought to taste to you. It's that what you want is what is good. And that's what I think is, when we think about love, here's a thought we want to have about it, is love itself has, well, to put it crudely to start with, as many varieties as there are lovers engage in it. So it's the form of engagement between two individuals, not the form of engagement between two types, right? So so think about, again, of looking at a painting, or looking at a work of art, or reading a novel. It's an engagement, your engagement with especially a painting, of this individual, this particular thing, right? It's not about your engagement with Renaissance paintings, or in general, it's with this, and you, and that. And we want to be able to do justice to a form of relationship with another person that's individualized and not generic. Does that make sense to you? So the thought is, our love story is as individual as we are, but part of the pressure of socialization is that it tends to induce norms into it. So remember we looked at this with pubic grooming, right? So the thought is, when I see you naked, it will be you. Or when I see you naked, I will see what nudity looks like these days, right? And in a way, that's we see two sources of pressure on us, right? One is we are us, but we're also manufactured, partly socialized, made to look a certain way, right? So we're not perfect individuals. We're sort of somewhat generic. And what we want to do is find the balance there again. The generic is like the control, and the uncontrolled is the way you embody it. Right? That's the picture.
So it's kind of like a mold you have,
Yeah.
that you kind of...
Say again?
It's kind of like a mold that everyone has, like a
Yeah,
and then everyone kind of crafts.
And I think that, so, right, as things stand, for example, just to think very simple things like getting clothes. So all of our clothes, they're all off the peg, right? We go into a store, we say we're a size 36 or whatever it is. We pick a shirt, or we're small, medium, large, we pick one. It's not a perfect fit. We're all a bit different. You're lucky if you're, as the guy said, oh, you're a perfect 36, right? You know, most of us are imperfect things, right? So the jeans fit on the waist, but not in the length, or the length, but not on the waist. You know, we try the best we can, do a little bit of altering. There's a different, that says, you know, essentially, you've got to fit these. These are fixed. You get to pick. But it's those that are fixed. So that's the type. We're all going to, you know, put on a uniform of a certain kind, and the uniforms are manufactured. Different would be altogether, and it's not far away, is that, you know, actually they just make one for you. So when everything's computer, all the stuff is done on computers, you just plug in your pattern, and they make one just for you, just like that. And you could design it. Now your capacity to express yourself through your clothes is just ratcheted up a whole notch. You don't have to go to the store and pick what's that. You could actually become a fashion designer and design just what you want to make it. That's the case in which our individuality is finding a way to express itself in these other things. The other one is where the social norms impress themselves on us. We're the wax, they're the mold. When we start being able to design the mold, then we get more of ourselves expressed in the way we are. But of course, we're still, our tastes, our sense of what looks good to another person, will still be under a certain amount of social influence. We can't escape that. That's Herzen's great thought. We can change the balance of power, but we can't get rid of the two poles. They're crucial. Yeah.
You got here from talking about chemistry,
Yeah.
And now it sort of seems like we've entered back into this realm where we're playing with the idea of freedom,
Yeah.
and how that plays into love.
Yeah.
Do you understand chemistry as something that is determined?
No, I think it's just like X. It's the X factor. So we tend to move to chemical or biochemistry or genetic explanations. But once upon a time, we would have said it was the god Eros or it was Cupid.
Well, so I'm not talking about chemistry like
yeah.
the word. I would say like your concept.
Is it something fixed?
Yeah.
Is that the thought? I think what we want is two things to be true simultaneously. We want it to be determined and free. We want it to be inevitable that we should be together, and yet our free choice. We want the maximum of both benefits, right? We're freely doing the necessary, right? That's the sort of thought. And each of those is, as you can see, right, those two are poles of a picture. So on the one hand, the idea of necessity is very reassuring. We're the perfect match. You're my other half. You're the, right, I'm the filler, you're, right. And then the other one is, but somehow or other, that's an expression of my individuality and freedom. It's not forced upon me. I'm not being conditioned, right? It's sort of me expressing, but there's this great fit. And I think that each of those, that's right, that's what we want. We want both of those things. Complete freedom and complete necessity. That's the ideal. You can't have them.
Would you say that an individual chooses his own chemistry then? Or is chemistry only something that you can have between two people?
No, well, let me say that I think, again, that either or on choice is both and. So, for example, our capacity to change ourselves up until relatively recently was fairly constrained, right? You could alter your appearance, you could wear different clothes, you could do all, modify your body in various sorts of ways, and people did all of those things. But now we can do even more, right? You could change your sex, your gender. You could become transgender. Right? You could, if we have genetic capacities to modify our genes, we can even go deeper and trick around with those. So I think the point is that where our freedom is and where it isn't is itself a shifting story. But more interesting, I think, is the stories we tell ourselves about where our freedom and determinism are. So think, I'm into girls, I couldn't be into guys. That's just a fact about me, man. I couldn't change that. You couldn't. That's not changeable. You think that your sexual, the objects of your sexual desire are fixed by something. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. It's not, right, it's rather that we want to tell ourselves a story like that, and then we say, what do you need a story like that for? Why is that a good story? Well, answer, then I can't help it. I'm off the hook for that. Right? Or it's natural. He's God, man. What can I say? It's got to be okay because it's natural, or it's got to be wrong because... I want to look downstream in those stories and ask, why do we find them attractive? Not, where's the fact? Because what I want to say when we turn to the facts is, that shifts around. It's not fixed once and for all. Yeah?
this, I think like we could even collapse the facts into something that's contingent. Like for example, is like I wouldn't like say like I like what is wooing man? These are analogical concepts. Is like and if I want to have like a love relation or an attraction relation, what I will always define this like kind of the essence that proves them to exist is always features and like subjective things that are kind of orbiting around, and I make an essence from this.
Yeah. So this, I think this is. So think about it this way again. Think that there's an underlying reality, right? But how it constrains the various social formations that focus in on it is much looser than you might think, right? So, here's a very obvious one. So we're all human beings, all relatively non-impaired human beings are capable of learning a natural language. Which natural language? Well, we all learn different things. And there's the underlying reality, but it's expressed in a huge variety of really very different kinds of languages. So when we came in the other day, there was a Mandarin symbol on the board. That's a little letter from a pictographic alphabet. We don't have that. Vietnamese is a pitch language. If we'd been brought up in Vietnam, we would have perfect pitch. Where everyone has it. To start with, you lose it. In just the way that native speakers of Japanese, who don't learn English very early, can't distinguish fried rice from fried rice. They can't hear the difference between the R and the L, though their children who've been brought up speaking English can hear it and express it. And there are a whole set of things like every language is like a filter. It says, pay attention to these things, not to those. That's noise, this is signal. Now, fine-tune your capacity to produce within the narrow set and hear within the narrow set. Think about all of our different accents. And yet we all understand each other, right? By and large. Occasionally, so when I first came to UNC, a young woman in my class, her name was Susan Heal. And I said, how do you spell it? And she said, like it sounds. And I said, well, it sounds to me like H-E-A-L or H-E-E-L. She says, no, heel, like Chapel Hill.
Oh my God.
Right, you see the difference? One of those, hill is how I say heel, and heel is how I say heel, right? Notice so often we do run into these